needing to ground in this Aquarian stellium retrograde. So let's start with all of us grounding as I light this Palo Santo and call in the north, the east, the south, the west, earth, air, fire, and water, all of our angels, ancestors, and allies, Gaia, the galaxy, the universe, to bring us into center, true self, connected in oneness, for whatever we want to spew today in our Priestess Mercury way. And our jumping off point for today's discussion is going to be an intuitive talk about different charts that we can cast in astrology to understand ourselves. And we want to have more of a healing discussion, not so much a history lesson or the math of it, but more like how we can understand ourselves, more of a right brain discussion of what these charts, what Matt and I feel these charts show us about ourselves.
Right. Yeah. And keeping in mind that the chart is a map, but there's that old adage that the map is not the territory, that it's just a kind of marker for you to get a sense of what's going on inside of you, and to listen to the interior voice, and let what comes up in the charts give you guidance, but not necessarily cause you to feel fated in any kind of way. Although there's a different approach to fate that maybe we can get to later on in the discussion.
Well, I think it's great to start right now and in this intuitive flow that when you do get into astrology and tarot, this is my take on it. You do start to understand your destiny before it arrives. It's just what happens.
Right.
And it's not, you can, my feeling, what I feel to be true, and again, we're all free to feel our own truth, is that a lot has already been written. And it shows up. I've seen it time and time again with charts and cards, time and time again. I have seen the cards and the charts predict way too often. And the way that I take that in is that if you want to know, don't ask unless you want to know, first of all.
Right.
Because it can be stressful. And I have certain clients that don't want to know. And then I have other clients that want to know and be prepared. And it's more, can you handle the responsibility? Do you want to be prepared?
Right.
And that also you're only going to be shown through the chart or the cards or any means of divining or understanding outside of time. You're only going to be shown what you're meant to see, not more.
Right. Yeah, because your inner self is there. And that's that part of you that's connected to the rest of consciousness or the universe. And, one of the things that astrology in particular tells us about ourselves is that we have more agency and power than we often allow ourselves to think we have. That your birth is not an accident. That there are things that your inner self is intending and bringing forth, that your ego might not fully understand.
Yeah, that's exactly that the difference, that who we are is all these different aspects, and the ego aspect is so different than the inner self or the true self or the soul that is incarnating with purpose, with essence, with fate, with destiny. The ego wants to have control.
Mhm.
It wants to say, I did it without any help. And the true self is like, no, you didn't. You're always connected to all the help. Like we live in a symbiotic, interdependent matrix.
Right.
Everything is connected.
Yeah, and also, recognizing that the you that you project as you is also made up of all kinds of living beings uh,
Yeah.
that we our modern medicine still doesn't even come close to comprehending. There's a lot that's going on in biology that is moving that direction, but it's still like you are a universe. Your body itself is a universe unto itself, and then you are, within this universe, and then there's a universe, that's beyond you as well.
When you share that, I'm thinking of Ken Wilber's book that I started reading, where he talks about that as halons all the way up, halons all the way down. And I know I'm not going to explain this well, but then somehow it gets to this example of turtles. He
Hmm.
explains it in the book. I don't even remember the name. Saxicology, and of course I don't remember the name. That's fine. But I like to now say in my mind, turtles all the way up, turtles all the way down.
Hmm.
That, and basically what you're saying, what he's saying is that we are a part and a whole all the time. The part is always the whole is always the part. The nesting dolls, you're a part and a whole all the way up, all the way down forever.
Hmm.
And how science, there was a time when the atom was the smallest thing, and then it's like, no, it's also a part whole. There's even smaller. Oh, it's also a part whole. There's even smaller. And same with bigger and bigger. And when it comes to astrology and tarot and these arts of the soul, I love how you said, I forget how you said it just now, but that we're not just, we're made up of so many different beings.
Hmm.
And when you look at that through depth and the soul, that's bringing in these archetypes. And that the archetypes, when we're looking at astrology, we're not looking at the rock in the sky of the planet. We're looking at the sentient being that is Mars, that is Venus,
Hmm.
and that these beings live in the collective unconscious. And the collective unconscious is part of us. Turtles all the way up, turtles all the way down.
Hmm.
At some point, we connect to Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Uranus as these beings.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and that's the chart.
Yeah, there is like a school of astrology that is all about that it's about the vibrations, not the planet bodies themselves are uh, just manifestations of an energy, that signature that has a pattern, a timed pattern to it, and that the planet's motion gives us a sense of what that is. And then, from that, they used a number of imaginary planets or things that we don't see yet uh, to also time out in a chart. So, there's a lot of approaches to it that are not just treating it like uh, it's a physics thing per se.
Yeah, it's not just the third dimension.
Right.
We're operating on so many dimensions at once. And when you're looking at the chart or these different charts, you're looking into the many dimensions. You're looking at turtles that are way down in there and way up there, and how they're affecting you. And that's so the some of the charts we were wanting to bring up. One, because I had a request to talk about progress
Hmm.
charts, and then the solar chart, solar return,
Hmm.
and the natal. And then we also thought if we have time, we'd throw in the what's it called in Hellenistic, the chart ruler.
Oh, are you talking about the perfections?
The perfections, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we can start with looking at the natal
Mm-hmm.
chart, which is like your signature for life,
Mm-hmm.
for your lifetime.
Yeah, and all the other charts kind of play off of your natal chart. They're
Yeah.
kind of a way of augmenting it, treating it like a clock in different ways, based on different approaches to time.
Treating it like a clock. Yeah. So the natal is like your center
Mm-hmm.
that's always at play. And then you're going to say something.
Yeah, and treating and when we talk about the natal chart or your birth chart, which is that signature for the moment you're born, we want to treat it like Richard Tarnas called it a multivalent approach, so that the things in there can mean a host of things. Jupiter can mean one thing in one person's chart, but it can mean something else entirely in somebody else's, um, within a kind of a range of meanings. So we want to, the natal is something we always want to come back to and try and pinpoint down a little bit more, try to figure out,
Always.
yeah, what's going
Yeah.
on.
That's the thing about the charts is you can look at it and always feel into it in a new way. It's alive. It's a
Mm-hmm.
living signature and it changes shape as you change shape
Mm-hmm.
and it speaks to you as you speak to it. It's not it there's the symbol of the chart, the symbology when you're actually looking at the wheel written down,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not the chart. That's just the symbol of
Right.
the chart. The chart is lived. It's living. It's living inside of you, again, all the way up, all the way down at all times. So it's really connecting to the interdependent turtles all the way up and all the way down the moment you look into the chart. And same with the cards. You're calling upon all the different connections all the way up, all the way down. And wherever you are locating yourself in that moment is the wisdom for the now,
Mm-hmm.
which is so cool. I mean, it just never gets old. I mean, it's always new. The moment is always new,
Yeah,
truly.
because the universe is alive. It's a living consciousness, and we're all a part of it. And so as long as we're here, we're still a part of that consciousness.
We're
Uh,
part of that consciousness. I'm just feeling that right now. And my constant passion to get astrology and tarot away from the left brain, logical, rational, conceptual place and back into the lived,
mhm.
sentient, conscious universe place. And Matt and I both feel this way, that the impact that we want to have is to remind you to tune into that, to tune into the aliveness and be your own reader
Mhm.
as you also seek guidance, because it's awesome to get guidance. But like to not forget that you're your own reader
Mhm.
and that each of us is meant to be our own reader. There's no way that I could read your chart in the same way that you read your own chart.
Yeah. And it's a lifelong process of figuring out, what these things mean for you. And, I've, I feel like I've been doing it for years, and I'm like still, every time I come back to the chart, there's something I wasn't seeing. Um,
Yeah.
and, the lived experience as we go through things, that it triggers certain, parts of us that, or it triggers our memory in a way that makes something completely new to us. I mean, it's the same way when you read a book, when you're a teenager, and then come back and read it again in your, 30s or 40s, and it's a totally different book. And you're like, what was that? Like, I
Yeah.
thought it meant one thing back then, and now it means something else. And it's because you're moving, you're growing, your consciousness is developing, and you know your interaction with it is going to be totally different because of your experience of time.
And I feel like, this is just props to Aquarius, because I feel like with all the planets in Aquarius right now, and Aquarius really representing innovation, I'm having a feeling inside of wanting to highlight the contrast of newness and change, and thinking about how our egos get so stuck. We want to make everything last forever. We
Yeah,
want marriages that last forever, homes that last forever, jobs that last forever. We're terrified of aging and terrified of death because we've forgotten the halons, we've forgotten the continuation, and the not connected to the feeling of the aliveness of consciousness, always becoming new, changing shape and changing form. And so I feel like the ego just wants to lock it down, like the moment, and
hmm
create rituals around it that's like forever it's this. And which is cool too. I don't want to, bash cool, awesome things like marriage, where you get to spend one lifetime with another person and make memories, or to have 30 years experience as a lawyer or whatever. Like, there's beauty in that as well. It's not
yeah.
one or the other. I'm just feeling the contrast of
Well,
how
and
we can hold
yeah,
on too much and
yeah,
not
and
allow for change.
most of those people that are married for 30, 40 years will tell you that it's a different, like, their partner is a different person and they're a different person at the end.
Right.
Like, it's a
Yeah.
different relationship from when you started, when you're getting close to the end of your lives. And
So
so it's,
different. So
yeah.
different. It's true that when you do create a long lasting ritual for whatever, there's constant change within it.
Hmm.
And so I think now that you share that, I'm like, yeah, true. And just thinking, like, I think what I want to say is learning in the spirit of Aquarius and talking about these charts is learning how to be flexible enough.
Hmm.
You know, when a marriage needs to end, when it's changing and going forward, when a career needs to end,
Hmm.
and again, these are, I just want to say, disclaim that this is when you have the privilege,
Right.
because of the fucked up world. Many people don't have the choice to
Right.
change
Well, that's
in order
that's
to
the
survive.
part of our the Western culture in particular that tries to standardize the hell out of everything in order to be able to predict what's going to happen. And unfortunately, that causes a lot of the oppression of people,
Right.
because people are the one thing that, well, one of the things, I mean, nature also is one of those things that we think we have it locked down. And then a virus leaps from a bat to people, and then we
Mhm.
have to deal with the terror of the fact that we don't control what's going on. That there are always going to be things outside of that control, and the more we've created these rigid structures, the harder that lesson is. Um,
Yeah, and it's and like the rigid structures are, just again, I don't want to get stuck in. I want us to talk about the charts, but
right.
the rigid structure of, humans being turned into a commodity just really sucks. And
Yeah.
it completely shuts down the true self. It
Hmm.
completely marginalizes and oppresses and gives nobody room to be a living, breathing consciousness that's constantly evolving. It just shuts the whole thing down. And it
Hmm.
sucks and it's horrifying. And we are stuck in this nightmare and trying to figure out how to transform it and heal it. And that's priority.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so as we talk about the living, breathing consciousness, I want to be sensitive to that, and that this conversation be an inspiration
Hmm.
versus, if you can't make these, I don't know.
Right. Well,
You
and
know what I'm
that's
saying?
yeah, and that's where when things like fate come up, when we're dealing with divination, when we're dealing with astrology, uh, it can uh, be felt like uh, someone else telling you to know your place, stay in your lane.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're talking about here at all.
Yeah, we're
Uh,
not talking about the stay in your lane, know your place, fate. We're
right. It's
talking
about,
about standing outside of time.
yeah, it's about stepping into who you are.
Stepping
Uh,
into who you are,
mhm,
standing outside of time. When you get outside the third dimension, you can see the future and the past as a prism or a fractal pattern, not a linear line,
mhm.
and you can step into who you are. And who you are isn't about the success of things like the ego wants. It's not about the success. It's not even about survival.
Right.
It's not even that. It's more about experience.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's kind of what the beauty of like dream life awakens us to, that things can come in and out and change and be very different, and it doesn't have to be just a survival mechanism per
Right,
se.
because death isn't the end,
Hmm.
you know? And survival is the first shock, right? It's like the game, the
Hmm.
Darwin game, and it's just one of many games. It's one of many lenses to look through. And that dream life, I love that. I love how you say that because in when you're dreaming, all sorts of weird things happen, and it's not about surviving. Like dreams show you the prism, the living consciousness in such a way of how more like it is,
Hmm.
in the sense that it's like a tarot card or like a chart.
Hmm.
It's beautiful. Like there's so much beauty. Even I'll just leave it at that. There's so
Yeah.
much beauty.
Well, and that's a good jumping uh, point to get into these other charts, because
Yeah.
that's kind of the idea that these sprang out of, that that your life looks different constantly, and that things are going to shift and change, and say what Mercury meant at the moment you were born is going to unfold and mean different things throughout your lifetime, and that if you keep casting different kinds of charts, then you can start to see some of those patterns ahead of time. One of the popular ones, and probably one of the oldest ones, is doing what we would call an solar return chart, the
I
annual
love the
chart.
solar return chart. Yeah, it's like your chart of the year on your birthday. It's the chart you cast to see the trends for the year ahead, the energies, and how they're playing with you for the year ahead.
Right. Yeah. When the sun comes back to that place where it was in the sky when you were born, and you can see a new pattern, and a new cycle happening. And the solar return charts are great. And most astrologers will offer, a solar return reading. It's really a great birthday gift for people to get
It
a
is a
sense
great
of,
birthday gift. Yeah.
yeah, to get a sense of what kind of can come ahead. And you can read it just like you do your natal chart, though you do want to kind of keep in mind where things are in your natal chart, and then compare them to where they are in the solar return. uh,
Yeah, I know Matt, you are way more detail oriented than I live like in the essence. So when I'm reading a solar return, I don't look at it in comparison to my natal because it's like too much. And then I just lose it. And feel like I'm listening to Star Trek language I can't understand anymore.
right.
Yeah. So it's that too is like, yeah, you can look at how it's playing off your natal chart, but you can also just look at the solar return in and of itself as like a year reading. Like that's how I feel about it. I feel like
Hmm.
the natal chart is who you are. The solar return is what's going to happen. And
Right.
and it's like what's going to happen in essence. Like if you have Uranus in the seventh house, there's going to be a sudden shift in your with close relationships or a partner, but you don't know exactly what that's going to be or what it's going to look like, but you know that that's like the trend. Whereas having
Right.
Uranus in your seventh house in your natal might be
Mhm.
that you're the type of person that suddenly has a different feeling or identity
Or
in
you go through a
relationship.
lot of sudden shifts that in those areas. You might go through a lot of very insightful relationships, but you might cycle through. It might not be like you
One person for
one
life.
person. Yeah.
It might be that you cycle through. And then again, I just want to bring it back to the lived consciousness that Uranus is coming up through the dimensions, through the
Hmm.
turtles, and living through the ego in
Hmm.
that way. So where, that's like that's how it's operating. And the destiny around that isn't so much in the physical manifestation of it, although the ego trips out on that and we get hooked on that because our senses are so intoxicating.
Hmm.
Yet it's almost more about the energetic experience. And to ground this, I just want to say this is really what wants to come out of me. Is that that's our karma and our dharma, that you can't, this is why you can't compare. Like one of the big
Right.
things that I say that I talk about a lot is like a lot of people are into manifestation magic
Hmm.
and manifesting, creating your reality. But if you have, like, I'm just going to use myself as an example. I have a 12th house north node
Hmm.
that's in Capricorn. So I am not meant to manipulate the physical world. I am meant to surrender my
Hmm.
strong physical, my desires for the worldly things, and let spirit bring it to me when I open my heart to the collective unconscious and the inner planes. I am not meant to do manifestation magic. It's not my karma, it's not my dharma.
Right.
And whenever I did it for years, every full and new moon, and never worked. But if I did ritual around my inner self, like being more
Hmm.
loving or more tolerant or whatever, it totally worked.
Hmm.
So that's like an example of like the chart will show you your karma and your dharma. Not everyone is meant to have the same experiences.
Right.
And that's where you can really see, is it your dharma is your purpose, your north node, and your karma would be like looking at Chiron and Pluto and Saturn and seeing what emotional baggage, that when you don't let go of an emotion,
Hmm.
it stays with you through the lifetimes. So your karma is the emotional baggage you've come into this lifetime with that you didn't let go of in the last lives. And
Yeah.
that shows up in Saturn. That's what Saturn's showing you. And Chiron is showing you that. Pluto is showing you that, showing you what you need to let go of. That's karma.
Hmm.
And those two really interplay there too, to tell you, to help you understand your true self better. We're not just these cookie cutters that are like,
Right.
create your reality, love yourself, period. It's way
Yeah.
more nuanced than that.
I hear a lot of that. I mean, a lot of the manifestation stuff. I hear a lot of it, and I'm like, it's not that easy.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, it can be, but you have to do a lot
That's
of
the
work to
thing.
get into yourself. Like, you're not going to do that if you're not in your own power already.
Well,
Uh,
there's that too. And then there's the people that might have Jupiter in the second house and just be like manifestation mavens, right? So for
yeah.
you, you're a manifestation maven that probably needs to do a lot of Chiron work in order to remember that. Whereas I'm not meant to be manifestation maven. I'm meant to surrender to the larger dimensions, the turtles all the way up and all the way down,
Hmm.
and let the physical sort of unfold from that center point, like very, very different karma dharma there.
Hmm.
You're here for one specific expression, and I'm here for another very specific expression. And if we compared and we're both reading the book, How to Create Your Reality, it's going to work great for you and work crappy for me.
Right.
So that's what's so awesome about the natal chart, because it will show you your karma and your dharma, and so that you can really get tuned in and specific. Whereas the solar return will then add that layer of like, okay,
Right.
like this is this year's version of it.
Right. I mean, it's the same thing that we're collectively starting to learn about genetics, that, we have this, all this encoded stuff in our DNA. So, as much as I want, I'm not going to my physical body is not going to shift to being like 6'3", 6'4". I have this limitation in my
Yeah.
genetic code. And, if I compare myself to somebody else, and what their genetic code is, it's just going to be a continual frustration.
Right.
Um,
It's such a great way to look at it when you see the limitations of genetics. And, science is so great in like honoring limitation. We don't challenge science, we accept the measurements and the DNA and the potential of it. And yet when it comes to the inner planes, it's it's the same. Halon's all the way up, Halon's all the way down. That
right.
And Saturn is the ruler of time,
Hmm.
limitation. Saturn's the one that says, here are your limitations.
Hmm.
And they're meant to be there so that we can have specific expressions.
Right. I mean, that's how form works. That's how manifestation, in a sense, works. That you have to bring things into form, and that requires limitations, constraints.
Yeah.
Um, there's, I mean, you have to have these hard stops within which something can take shape. Without that, it's just kind of an idea in the ether.
Right. It's a dimension, whatever, the 22nd dimension, where it's an expansive idea that hasn't landed in a third dimensional brain. Or, yeah,
Hmm.
it's again all the way up, all the way down. And we're constantly shifting, changing. It's the kaleidoscope. And so just jumping into progressed chart
Hmm.
from here. So if solar is the year, natal's the
Hmm.
signature for life,
Right.
then there's the progressed chart.
Which is basic. I mean, it's really like taking the natal clock and just the natal chart and making it a clock.
Yeah.
So you're just watching how the planets moved after you were born. And the basic idea, the easiest way to say it is like each day that you lived equates to, after you're born, equates to a year of your life down the road. So, the first day after you were born would be the progress chart for the your first year of life.
Yeah. So then you can, in the progress chart, this is, I've never been big into the progress chart. And then there was a request to talk about it. So
Hmm.
I'll revisit it every now and then and be like, this time around, thank you. Shout out to Holly. Uh, this time around, I I just got into 0 degree Capricorn as a sun. I was like, ooh, I feel that.
Hmm.
I feel that, yeah, I'm a Scorpio, and that's undeniable. And then I can feel the Capricorn overlay as my
Hmm.
life has, like, the sun is, right, our ego consciousness. And I can definitely see a movement in a 0 degree, like just getting into this Capricornian ego consciousness where it's, so I can feel it. I can feel my values shifting,
Right.
and I can feel it living through me, the Capricorn. And I know I have that North node too,
Hmm.
so, and Jupiter in Capricorn, so it's already there. But Uh, do you feel what are you? You're Capricorn now in progress, right?
Yeah, my sun is. It's been there for quite a while.
Yeah,
So
late degree because you're
because I'm
Sagittarius sun.
Sagittarius. Hmm. Yeah, I'm an early Sagittarius sun. So I mean, our birthdays are not that far apart, just a couple of
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah.
So yeah, so I hit. My progressed sun moved into Capricorn about the same time I had my Saturn return, and then
Um,
now it's we're talking another 15 years later. So my progressed sun's about halfway through Capricorn already. So I'm not as alive to that shift in my sun, but
yeah.
there was a period where I would watch when my moon would change signs and was looking at the tenor and of my emotional states. Say when I had a progressed moon in Gemini and then it shifted into Cancer.
Would
And
it
those are
shift?
very, and then all of a sudden I was at home a lot. And home was a big important thing, having a
Right.
sense of security and those kind of things. And then it shifted again and into Leo, and
How quickly does the moon shift?
uh, about every 2.5 years, because
Every
it
two and a
shifts
half years.
signs every 2.5 days. So the moon will get around the whole
A
chart.
lot more.
It
Yeah.
follows about the same pattern as a Saturn cycle.
Whereas the sun takes 30 years, a degree a year, right?
Right. So your progressed sun will only change maybe twice, depending on where you're. Maybe three
Yeah.
times if you're
Right. Because
at
it's
the very end of a sign when you're
a
born, but you
degree a
wouldn't
year.
notice the first shift so much.
Yeah. Yeah. So the moon, yeah, is definitely one you can track. And it's like an overlay. It's like, oh, I'm a Scorpio Capricorn. My
Hmm.
moon is Cancer right now. And you made that mention of, well, you're always at home, which COVID uh kind of created that. But I definitely feel I've a natal Libra moon, so I'm always seeing both sides to everything and totally emotionally indecisive because I can see the benefit of both sides all the time. So it's how do you
Hmm.
pick one when you're like, that's valid, that's valid, that sounds good, that sounds. I basically think anyone with a Libra moon is always two emotional people at the same time.
Hmm.
And you just have to pick one because both are true. But I can definitely feel the Cancer overlay in the
Hmm.
sense of I feel way more emotionally reserved than I used to.
Right. Well, when things progress, we're looking at the signature of time in your life. So we have this core uh, sense of how we structure our emotions that we got from our familial surroundings when we were growing up. And the moon kind of represents a lot of that. And then, when as it progresses, it just changes the flavor of it or the feeling or the way we experience it. It gives it a slightly different feel. And when you're more tuned in, you recognize that pattern and that flow.
Yeah, because again,
Uh,
it's tuning in to
mhm.
the inner dimensions, the turtles up and down, and yeah. So it's like as you're saying that, I'm like, I can feel the oh, your natal moon's always there, and then I can feel it's Cancer right now,
Mhm.
and I feel a little more emotionally reserved, a little more like you got to earn your trust. Whereas and when my moon was my moon is Gemini and my solar return. So here's where it gets funky when
Mhm.
you can kind of go bananas because it's like how many selves can you analyze and feel into and reflect upon at once. But
Yeah,
you know
that's one of those things that I really valued when I was reading a lot of P.D. Ushpensky and Gurdjieff, and there's that emphasis on that there are multitudes of eyes within the self, and they're always vying for the
the,
ego,
the
the
driver's seat.
the driver's seat,
The
and
ego's the driver's seat.
Yeah. So a lot of times we feel a lot like different people. And so, Gurdjieff was all about like disciplining the self to get down to
I
cut
love that.
through.
I love
Uh,
that. I love that because right there, it's, yeah, that's such a great way to ground that, Matt, because it's like your ego's the driver's seat. It's got the control center.
mhm,
And it's always, and this is how it works with turtles all the way up and down, is that you never know who's going to possess the driver's seat. And when you're on the path of self awareness, you learn to detect who's got the driver's seat. If you're not on
mhm,
that path, it's constant, and it's a constant barrage of archetypes. And whether you're looking through the lens of astrology and it's like Venus or the moon, or you're looking through tarot and it's like the Empress, when you suddenly have like a super strong desire to
mhm.
create out of nowhere, it's the Empress has gotten control. When you suddenly feel all butt wounded by something that's totally just a molehill, maybe your inner child just got into that
Mhm.
driver's seat. And then so looking at that through the lens of these different charts, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, the progressed moon got control of the driver's seat. The solar moon got control of the driver's seat. The natal moon's in control of the driver's seat. And that that this brings up another aspect of the where we do have control, that we
Mhm.
have total, and this is control not in the shitty way of like control it, but more like in the magician way of,
Mhm.
learning how to control earth, air, fire, and water. And that we can manipulate. And again, I say that in the positive way of like manipulating clay, manipulating consciousness, and
Yeah.
who's
We've
going to be in the driver's seat.
in some way like we form when we consciously engage with it, we form coalitions between those different eyes. Uh,
Yeah.
so that there's more of a sense that this is, I understand more of where we're going and what we're doing. And I there is it is not so haphazard. Um,
And and again, this is what I feel to be true. So I don't want to say this is the truth, just what I feel.
mhm,
What How it comes through me is that the physical events are already written,
mhm,
and how we choose to show up to these events is where we have the control or the difference or the flexibility.
mhm,
And so making these coalitions, when the ego makes these coalitions, which is really more like the witness making a coalition,
mhm,
the ego, when you start to practice mindfulness, becomes the witness. It becomes the overseer, the witness, the one watching it happen.
mhm.
It Which is really like kind of like the soul coming into the ego, the true self. And
Right.
then that's the alchemy, when the true self rises out of the shadow and can occupy the driver's seat. You can learn. And just to be grounded for a second, because I feel like I'm totally ungrounded right now suddenly,
Right.
is that one thing that I'm always talking about with clients is the negative narrative.
Mhm,
We all have our negative narrative. We all have that part that feels not good enough,
mhm,
insecure, the attachment wound, the karmic wound, etc. And that will occupy the driver's seat anytime something scary or bad, quote unquote, happens, or if someone rejects you, or you lose your job, or the person you love doesn't love you back, or whatever. And that negative narrative self, the wounded self, the pain body will occupy the driver's seat. And then that's where you can say no.
mhm,
When your true self has enough control, when you learn this, you can say, the feeling of being not good enough is very strong, but I'm
mhm,
going to turn down that volume. I'm going to take that wound pain body out of the
mhm.
driver's seat.
Yeah, and that's part of where astrology can be really helpful because it's like you can recognize, oh wait, I'm having a flash of anger. That's my Aries moon. Uh, and
Right.
then you can bring that archetype that's within you kind of into a responsibility relationship or a commitment with,
Coalition, like
yeah,
you
that
said.
coalition, so that it's like, okay, they don't all just run away with everything, that they kind of keep everything, it keeps everything in check a little bit.
Yeah, so, if the negative narrative is coming in, you filter that through astrology.
Hmm.
Like, if you have an Aries moon, then the negative narrative will be like really, probably really quite bold with like, I suck. I just suck. I'm
Hmm.
terrible, you know?
Yeah.
And then you can say, you know what, Aries moon, I know you're hurt. I know you're feeling hurt.
Hmm.
And, but you don't suck. And I'm totally making this up at the moment. I don't even know if this is going to land, but let's call upon my progressed Gemini moon to come in.
Hmm.
And instead of focusing on how we suck, let's just like read a book on attachment healing right now.
or or make a chart of the different the pros and cons of what's going on. Is it really that way, or is it maybe this way, or
Right.
like,
Yeah. Like kind of look at it, analyze it from the Gemini moon place.
yeah, what am I feeling? What's my sensory experience right now? Check in
So
with that.
it's interesting that as we're talking about this, I haven't done this myself. I have not used the astrological archetypes to shift around who's in my driver's seat. But now that we're talking about it, I'm like, oh, okay. So when my natal Libra moon's like, well, I could do this, I could do that forever. I can call
Right.
upon my progressed Cancer moon to say, what feels most cozy and nourishing,
Right.
and to help me make a decision. And then I can call upon my Gemini solar moon to be like, well, this year emotionally, it's about learning a lot.
Hmm.
So I want to learn a lot and also feel safe and cozy. Those are the two things to help give my two Libra twins, like help them make a decision.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like that. You can look at your natal, that's going to be the default feeling if we're
Hmm.
talking the moon. And then you can bring in the progression and the solar moon to help show up
Right.
for the moment.
Yeah, and one of the things that's great about, for instance, like the progress chart or these other the annual charts, is that you also get a sense that whatever I'm feeling right now, I don't have to feel forever. That in time things will change, and I know we know this, like consciously we're aware of it, but we don't always um, in the moment we don't always experience it that way, and that's one of the things with astrology giving us a kind of clock to look at. It helps us to get a sense of how much longer do I have to deal with this.
Oh,
uh,
yeah, right. That's
it's like putting a
so,
date on a calendar, and you can be like, it's going to change, it's going to
yeah,
change. And when you know what that limit is, it can be freeing in a way. It can
yeah.
it can
It,
build that expectation in you that things are going to shift and change, and then of course you're attracting that difference in time. And that's kind of how I think law of attraction should really work anyway, is like we do these disciplined things to help us to uh, tune the mind to the right place.
yeah, tuning the mind to the right place when you're in the law of attraction is understanding your destiny and tuning into that versus just trying to get the things. The ego wants the same things. Every ego wants attention, love, money, because money
Mhm.
means comfort and ease. It's the basics. The ego, the primitive, the animal brain wants to be secure, safe, comfortable, loved, and valued over and
Mhm.
over and over. And then the soul is like, yeah, but like 90% other things. Like,
Right.
I'm here in this lifetime, I'm here to be, and I'm here to be a bad person. I'm here to hurt others and learn what that does to me. I'm here to
Mhm.
heal. Here, I'm in this lifetime to heal and be empowered. All the way light to dark, turtles all the way up and down. The soul will manifest to be a negative energy as much as a positive energy. There is no judgment in
Mhm.
the largest scope of the universe. It's only the ego. And I don't mean to downplay by saying it's only the ego, it's the human story, and it's really rich, is to create liberty and justice and love.
Mhm.
We humans are the sentimental life forms. We're poetic. The way that we filter the experience through the human to desire liberty and justice, is a beautiful, beautiful, amazing thing.
Mhm.
My only point is that it's not the only thing, and that nature, universe includes all of it,
Right.
and the soul will manifest for all different reasons. Sometimes a conscious choice, and sometimes it's a karmic choice.
Mhm.
Like, well, it's not a choice. It's like the more that you let go of your karma in every lifetime, the more choice you do have. That's how it works. You have more choice when
Mhm.
you pass on, and you
Right.
have, but if you die with a bunch of hatred in your heart, your soul, like a magnet, is just going to get sucked back into a life where you're going to re-experience that, because it's like magnetic. And the more that you let go of these karmas, the more you can choose. And that's a path. That's just one path
Right.
too. It's not every, that's just like the Blu-ray path of the soul. Not everyone is on that path. Some people are just on here to live and die and be universe matter, be prima materia. That's my
Mhm.
like 5-year-old trying to say Latin. So I totally lost my train of thought. What were we
Yeah.
talking
Well, I
about?
mean, it's all about knowing your once you are aware of your limitations, and that we can think of the karma in that way as a limitation, then we can let go of it. Where we accept it, and it
Oh,
is what it
that's right.
is. And this is,
So, in one way, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in. I know I'm a little spazzy, but right there with letting go of the karma, it's Pluto.
mhm,
Pluto is forgive, let go, unconditional love, even for the worst of the worst. No expectation that anyone be moral. And, people are always so astonished, like, oh, you lied and you did something harmful, as if it's like
mhm,
astonishing. But when Pluto knows that we're capable of all the light and all the dark, we're capable of all of it. There's no expectation, even if you want it to be that way. And Pluto is that letting go. And when Pluto aspects in your chart, and when it aspects, when you go through so much loss.
mhm. Yeah, the Pluto square is a very difficult transit to deal with. I know personally, like that was probably the hardest period of my life, where
Mhm.
I mean, I was facing up to having to let go of something I really didn't want to let go of,
Yeah, it's
and
brutal.
it just takes you like into the
Down.
underworld, the dark night of the soul kind of stuff, and you just really have to come to grips with, okay, I'm not. That's a limitation. I meant for that limitation when I came into my existence. So, you
Because
know,
through loss, we learn unconditional love. It's essentially the Pluto's mission.
mhm,
Through loss, we learn forgiveness. Through loss, we learn unconditional love. And when you can look at your natal Pluto and you can see where there's a loss of power in your
mhm,
signature, because that's ultimately the loss of power. And then you can look at your solar Pluto and see where you're going to experience that for the year, that loss of power that's going to catapult unconditional love. Like if you have a natal Pluto in the eighth house, there
mhm,
might be, you have this signature in you where you're always tied to other people's resources. You never feel like you can have your own resources. You're always at the whim
Right.
of a boss or a family member, and it's like this thing in your soul, right? Your natal. And then you look at your solar and Pluto's in the sixth house, and you can be like, oh, this year I'm going to have health issues
Hmm.
and there's going to be a loss of health. And,
Or I might have to put myself in a place of subservience to something, to let go of the need to have autonomy or something like that.
yeah, you might, with a sixth house, might have to follow a certain routine or be like a workhorse, and task out the year.
Hmm.
And so on one layer, you're seeing where there's a loss of power, but on the healing layer, that if
Hmm.
you want to activate the healing layer of Pluto, if you have like a natal eighth house Pluto, it's like you've got to feel your sense of power beyond other people's resources. It's not about solving the thing to feel power.
Right.
It's about feeling power internally. So
Hmm.
if you have a health crisis, Pluto in the sixth house, and your body becomes limited, it's like learning that it's Pluto is going to ask you to forgive that experience and gain a deeper sense of unconditional love for life, for yourself, for others through that health crisis,
Hmm.
wherever it is in the stage of, and of course, the sign, you know,
Hmm.
is going to,
Although the sign is going to, for Pluto in
or Pluto
particular, is
won't
going to be
change.
generational.
Or, yeah,
Uh, like anyone born from like 70 in the 70s for the most part, or in early 80s, has Pluto in Libra. And then, there's about 20 years of Pluto in uh, Scorpio, and then it
I
was
love
in.
you, Pluto Scorpios.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's generational. And then, so that generation too, so us Pluto Libra,
Yeah,
yeah,
Libra.
us Pluto Libra peeps are learning about the loss of power and relationship and how to heal from that. And then Pluto Scorpio, I love you guys, because that's just like Pluto on top of Pluto. That's just like the loss of it all.
Yeah, that's there. Yeah, there's a lot
Blowing
of
it all up.
trauma and healing from aggression and power, being having your power taken away from you, kind of stuff.
Yeah, the Pluto always generationally squares the Neptune, right? So you Pluto Scorpio, or
Well,
not square,
sextile. They've
sextile.
been they these planets move very slowly, so they stay in these relationships for a long time. And
And then it's
Pluto
like
and
the imprint. Yeah.
yeah, Pluto and Neptune keep moving in and out of a sextile. They have for uh over 50 years. So
Yeah, and so like the Pluto Scorpio generation sextiles the Neptune in Capricorn, which is basically like toxic patriarchy be gone. Let's
mhm,
build a new and fair structure. Whereas us Pluto Libra sextiling Neptune Sag are
mhm,
like the age of psychological awareness, like bringing therapy and awareness and like
mhm.
how to have more harmony in relationship and to speak more of the higher wisdom.
Yeah, and how do you let go of having to be right? I
Right.
think is a big thing that we're uh, when you're talking about that Pluto and Libra, in order to bring the balance, you have to let go of uh, needing to be right all the time, and
Yeah.
that Neptune in Sagittarius reminds us of that. So,
It's a little,
and
little tangent at the end. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, we can maybe we'll dig in a little bit more into these as the episodes unfold. But yeah, there's a lot to be had from these charts and looking at how things unfold for you across the scope of your life. And there are just multiple ways to dig in. With astrology, there is no hard line. Uh, Everything's not filled in where you can just go look at it in one book and know exactly what your life is going to be like. It's a lifelong study.
Yeah, it's a lifelong feel into. And if you have any requests for what we talk about, please let us know. Feel free to let us know in a comment or however what you'd like to hear us hash out in the
Mhm.
moment, in the lived moment. And as always, if you're looking for astrology, any kind of astrology reading, reach out to Matt. If you're
Mhm.
looking for spiritual therapy, astrological tarot, depth therapy, uh, reach out to me.
Mhm.
And we will see you at the next Priestess Mercury hour.